Due process. A fair process is required for government to take or deprive a person's life, liberty, or property. Due process rights are only if the government acts to deprive an individual, not when government acts generally. So for an analysis, one, you have to ask, has there been a deprivation of life, liberty, or property? So liberty deprivation is a loss of a significant freedom or action or freedom provided by the Constitution or a statute. So this is institutionalization, government restriction of fundamental rights. Property deprivation is a legitimate claim or entitlement to a benefit under the law, which the government goes unfulfilled. And this is with public school attendance or welfare. And then second, what procedures are required? This is determined by balancing A, the importance of the individual interests involved, and B, the value of procedural safeguards to that interest against C, government interests. So this is like fiscal or administrative efficiency, usually fair procedures, and unbiased decision makers and notice of the government's action will be required. So examples, procedural due process requirements arise with terminating welfare, social security benefits, separating child from parents, punitive damages, awards, enemy combat, statuses for citizens obtained for foreign countries. And then there's substantive due process. This involves the determination of whether the government has adequate reason for depriving life, liberty, or property. This encompasses both fundamental and non-fundamental rights. So an acceptable or the applicable levels of scrutiny are non-fundamental rights. We got rational basis. Fundamental rights get strict scrutiny. Substantive due process versus equal protection clause. The similarities under both substantive due process and equal protection, a court reviews the substance of the law, not the procedures. So the differences are substantive due process usually involves laws affecting rights of all persons to engage in some conduct or activity, whereas equal protection usually involves laws treating certain people or classes of people differently than others, often based on some trait. Then we have economic rights, which is with the rational basis test. Constitution provides only minimal protection for economic liberties, laws affecting or amounting to taking one's economic rights. Rational basis applies unless the infringement falls under the constitutional clause or takings clause. Government almost always wins under the rational basis test. The contract clause states cannot impair existing contractual duties. This applies only to state and local interference with existing contractual obligations, including government obligations. Levels of scrutiny. Different for private versus public contracts. Private contracts. Intermediate type scrutiny. If a law substantially impairs a party's rights under an existing contract, it violates the contract clause unless the law, 1, serves as an important legitimate public interest, and 2, is reasonable and narrowly tailored to promoting that interest. Government contracts, stricter scrutiny. Local laws substantially impairing or interfering with existing government contracts must be reasonable and necessary to serve an important public purpose. Ex post facto clause and bills of attainder. The Constitution prohibits state and federal government from passing retroactive laws, which generally involve either ex post facto laws or bill of attainder. Ex post facto clause prohibits ex post facto laws The test is a law is an ex post facto law if it either A, criminally punishes conduct that was lawfully when done, B, increases punishment for a crime after it has been committed, or C, reduces the burden required to convict a person for a crime after it has been committed. It does not have to apply to civil liberties where retroactive legislation must meet only rational basis. Note, ex post facto clause is contained in the contracts clause. Bills of attainder. Legislative acts that punish specific individuals or group members without judicial trial. An example is an order to imprison a person without judicial process. Bills of attainder are prohibited under the Constitution. The Fifth Amendment prohibits government taking private property without providing just compensation to the owner and or occupant. Government may take private property for public use. Taking can be possessory, physical, or regulatory. It applies to government action that significantly damages property or its use. There is a three-part analysis to determine if the taking is constitutional. You must ask, 1, has there been a taking? There are 2 types of taking. 1, there's a possessory taking. The government takes or occupies physical property. The government may take private property for private development. Or 2, regulatory taking. Government action adversely affects property value, where taking occurs dependent on the extent of economic interference. So denial of all economic value, taking requires compensation. Denial of nearly all value depends on the social goals promoted, diminution in value to the owner, and interference with owner's investment expectations. The second part of the analysis is the taking for public use. Taking for public use, if government has a reasonable belief that the taking will benefit the public, which is a low standard, the use will be viewed as benefiting public as long as it rationally relates to some legitimate public purpose. And the third part of this analysis is just compensation paid. This is measured in terms of loss to the owner, measured by fair value of property at the time of the taking.